Okay, on the Transgender Day of Remembrance across the globe, transgender communities and allies unite to raise awareness of the prejudice and threat of violence faced by gender variant and trans people. Suffolk Now is honored to host this event. We will have 4 speakers on our panel. Following their presentations, we will have a question and answer session with comments. And we ask that you hold your questions till then, or put them in the chat. We will end our evening with a ceremony to honor and mourn those who have been victims of anti-trans violence in the past year, followed by resources and final comments. Thank you so much for attending. I would first like to introduce our first panelist, Cynthia BrianKate. Cynthia is a longtime Suffolk Now member and transgender and gender nonconforming rights activist. She educates the public on LGBTQIA+ issues and gender nonconforming terminology. I'll just turn it over to Cynthia. Cynthia, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. Let's see. Yeah, I've been involved with Transgender Day of Remembrance since 2002. The event was founded in '99 by my friend Gwendolyn Smith. Back then, the event was a small thing done in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And yeah, all along, TDOR's whole purpose has been to raise awareness about discrimination, violence, and murder directed against transgender, intersex, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people, and to, let's see, commemorate the lives of people killed in such violence, and to show the commitment of both the gender communities and all our supporters, friends, and family to try making a world that's better, more accepting, and less likely to be encouraging such bad stuff as the event has been founded to address. Okay, first I'll do quick terminology. Transgender, somebody whose gender identity or expression is not what was expected of them at birth. Cisgender are people who, well, where your gender identity and the gender you expected at birth and were raised as matches the same thing. Intersex, which I actually am myself. See, I'm transgender because I was raised a boy and grew up to be a woman anyways. Intersex, biologically in between male and female, which I also am. 2 are not the same thing, but many people like me are both. I'm also a chimera, which means I'm the product of siblings who merged in utero. I have a lot of friends who are non-binary who don't identify as man or woman. And gender non-conforming can be darn near anybody who in some way doesn't live out and express every stereotype of binary gender stuff that society still too often throws on us. And that's among the stuff that TDOR it has to do with addressing. The idea that unfortunately we still have all the discrimination, violence, and murder in the world that made it necessary in 1999. I am proud that we've had so many events. I'm proud to have been able to speak at so many events like tonight. I wish we didn't have to keep having it as an ongoing thing. I pray every year, sometimes every week or every day, that I get to wake up someday and get told, oh, the haters all went home. Nobody else is getting killed. We'll paint your nails while you tell us about the stupid days. I hope we get there at some point. Until then, I'm going to keep talking about all this stuff. And I feel it's more urgent now than ever because we're on the cusp of a presidential election and congressional and a whole bunch of other elected offices. And sadly, over the last few years, the enemies of gender identity and expression rights have been clamping down everything they can, trying to ban every right of people to express their gender freely in some states, the rights of people to be able to transition, as in change their physical sex characteristics, as well as their living socially using names, clothes, pronouns, and such. I'm actually about to start what is known as medical transition rather than just social. And while I'm glad to have the doctor that I'm seeking this with, I'm sad that I have him because he had to flee a red state where his entire practice was being banned systematically. The haters have decided that they want to go after our youth. That's why you have all this turmoil in the media about attacking the rights of trans athletes, particularly high school and college. It's why you have all the states where right wing haters are trying to ban the rights of young people to express their gender or transition. And that's why we're here to say no to all of that. Because those hideous policies cost lives. If you go to the TDOR main official website, tdor.translivesmatter.info, there's at least half a dozen cases that aren't your standard murder, but I count as murder anyways when school districts, politicians, municipalities, and states have taken away people's rights as youth to come out as the gender they are and express it and seek some kind of transition services. That leads to people who feel forced to take their own lives. As a teen, I did feel suicidal because we didn't have any options like hormone blockers, hormone replacement, any of that in my town that I grew up in. I grew up in a tiny town in the middle of Long Island in the 1980s and 90s. The world's gone so forward since then, and the bad politicians and other haters want to take it back. And tonight is about saying no to that, and saying that we want a better world, saying that we want the freedom and safety of people to express their gender. And besides that, I'm talking about this stuff right here, and I'm able to. I will say that not everybody feels safe to, not everybody survives to. That's why we have to commemorate lives of people who did not survive such discrimination and violence. In fact, I got involved with this event in the first place because I was nearly lynched in my hometown and decided, no, not letting it happen to me again, not letting it happen to other people. If I got to be like Wonder Woman in my favorite comic books, then I will. I swore that in 2000 and try to live by that. And that includes the right to housing. I'm glad to live in what's considered a sanctuary state. I'm sad that New York has to be one. Every state in the 50s should be a safe state for me to live and have my rights. And as for housing, I moved back to Long Island because an apartment complex discriminated against me in a part of even a progressive area of Michigan that had these rights on paper. As Grace Welch, longtime Now activist, has said at every event I've seen her at, we need full equality and dignity under the law. Right now, we have the Equality Act, which has been rotting in Congress far too long. We need to demand that it gets passed as soon as possible. New York has passed a lot of positive laws. We have the Gender Expression Non Discrimination Act and the Dignity for All Students Act. And we also have the Anti Panic Defense Law, which says that, God forbid, some hater kills somebody over hating their gender. They don't get to blame the person they killed. And we did pass the Safe Haven Sanctuary State Law. Thing is, we still haven't passed the bill, which I think in the state Senate is 1532. I'm sorry, I think with numbers. I think it's State Senate Bill 1532 and State Assembly Bill number 4576. And that bill has been in committee, I think, since President Obama's last years. What it's going to do is put explicit mechanisms in both gender and DASA, which say not just, okay, we're supposed to protect trans students and young people. The schools are supposed to have explicit mechanisms. Here's how you punish a bully when they hate. Here's how you empower a student who could use it. Here's how you help a student who's hurting. Because the teen years are scary for everybody, but they're especially scary if you don't feel you have enough support. And we need that kind of support. As I said, the haters are going after our kids. I feel we have to protect our kids at every level. And kids, young people, older people, we need to have safe and free gender expression. That needs to be a basic right. Also includes fully informed consent in medical decisions for intersex people, so we get to have bodily autonomy. And all this stuff is what I've seen now working on from the time I first heard about now. In fact, it's why I joined in the first place. Holy wow, there's a group for women's stuff that actually says I get to be a woman and says I get to have this weirdly non-binary body while I have a binary gender identity. Sign me up. And that's why I've been, let's see, I think Donna's had the pleasure of getting to see me at events for now since what, 2013 now? So
Love
this is
that.
what we need to work. This is what we need to keep working on as a group. All of us, all people who care about gender rights. We got to keep demanding it. We got to keep helping candidates who are progressive on this get to office. And again, I'll leave it for now on what Grace Welch said: full dignity and equality under the law, as she underscores those three words.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Is there, you have another minute or two if you'd like to add anything else, or?
Actually, yeah, I'll say that gender identity and expression. I have friends and even some relatives who've thought that's only for trans people. No, that's for everybody. Cis, trans. I have a friend who is very girly and who had to kick her boyfriend to the curb for not wanting her to dress like a girl. And she was shocked when I said, you know what, you got the same issues as me. So does everybody. Gender identity and expression are everybody's to have and must be free for everybody to enjoy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you very much. And if you hold your questions, we'll take questions and answers after all the panelists are finished. Okay, so our next panelist is Jeff Livingston, also known under their stage name, Annie Maneldew. Annie is a recent graduate of Stony Brook University, having gotten their MA in Higher Education Administration while pursuing their degree in higher education. Their main focus of study was in LGBTQ plus and multicultural affairs. Jeff also worked for 3 years as a graduate coordinator at the campus LGBTQ plus Services Center and has spent the last 10 years performing in drag. Jeff has also become known for local political activism, having staged a protest of a bar in Patchogue for their transphobic behavior. As a result of this, Jeff has been given a certificate of recognition by the Chamber of Commerce of Patchogue and was involved with the planning of Patchogue's first Pride edition of Alive After 5. Jeff has also been given an award for recognition by Project Inspect via Northwell Health for their contributions to Richmond Hill Pride. Some milestones of their nightlife career have included performing at Sephora in Times Square as a model for Clinique Cosmetics, being the first drag performer to produce a show in Little Italy in New York City, being one of the first drag performers on Block Island, having also performed in Queens, Brooklyn, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Philadelphia. Annie was also featured on an award-winning segment on News 12 Long Island about a show they produced in Babylon called The Girls of Summer. Welcome, Jeffrey. Annie, welcome, Annie.
Either or, any name will do. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So like Donna pointed out, I got my MA at Stony Brook in Higher Education Administration. And when you go for that kind of degree, you can kind of unofficially pick a focus. And so I sort of based all of my research in studying LGBTQ student experiences and also multicultural affairs. And at campus, I also worked, like I said, at the LGBTQ Services Center, which is actually where I met Cassandra, who you'll be meeting soon. At the Services Center, one of the things, or a few of the things that we talked about a lot were intersectionality and the differences between sex and gender and all the kind of nuances that go along with all of those kinds of things. So we spent a lot of time training people about how these kind of concepts work and like what it all means essentially. But when I was graduating, I had to write a capstone paper, which is essentially just a 25-page paper and it had to be about something in higher education. And so, of course, I chose to talk about LGBTQ students. And so, my paper, the name of it is Deconstructing the Rainbow, a closer look at marginalized aspects of an already marginalized population. And basically, my aim with this paper was I don't know if this is shocking information, but typically when studies are done on the LGBTQ community, the one aspect that is the most focused on is the G. More times than not, white gay males are the ones who get, white cis gay males are the ones who get the most attention. And that doesn't just stop at this, it also it also is prevalent in medical studies. You'll find that most medical studies, until recently, they didn't even have graphs that included what Black people look like when they had certain injuries. So to say that certain research is behind the times is an understatement. Also, I feel like I hear an echo. Is somebody's microphone on? Because that might be causing my voice to echo. I just hear it in the back. But so anyway, my paper was basically an attempt to try to kind of dig deeper into the L, the B, the L, the B, and the T of that umbrella. Thank you, Cassie. And so I actually pulled up the page of my paper that I talk about specifically trans folks in higher education. And so the thing that's kind of ironic about all of it is the fact that even though most of research and most of conversation is focused on white gay males, most of the queer liberation movement was spearheaded by trans and gender nonconforming people, and mostly of color. So the people who kind of got the ball rolling for equality for queer people is the people who are not really, who are kind of kicked to the curb these days. And when I was researching my topics, the thing that is kind of almost maddening is that, as I suspected, it was really, really hard to find information because it doesn't exist. The studies aren't done. But so one of the things that I found was that there was from 2018, which is probably the most recent information I was able to find. Mind you, I wrote this in 2022. Was that there was a survey done. It found that 24% of respondents who were out or perceived as trans in college reported that they were verbally, physically, or sexually harassed at a certain point throughout their college career. And 16% of those who experienced harassment ended up leaving college specifically because of that harassment. So, you know, this kind of, I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't the harassment is obviously not good. We all know this. But that harassment also has additional consequences beyond just that. A person can get past being called a name or being, you know, punched or something or whatever, but then it just impedes their ability to do other things. Their basic needs aren't being met because they're not safe. In order to thrive and to grow in an educational setting, you need certain basic foundational things. You need food, you need water, you need your basics covered, you need a place to live, but then you also need a sense of security. And oftentimes on college campuses, trans and gender nonconforming students don't feel secure. So they're from the very get-go not given their best chance to succeed. I'm just trying to see if I can find. So the other issue that makes it difficult is that sometimes the research isn't there for a lack of trying. What makes this more nuanced and complicated is the fact that it's hard to collect data on a population that doesn't even want you to know who they are, because many trans folks end up either trying to hide their identity or, well, no, they try to hide their identity because they don't want to face harassment. So it's not even so much that the research there's not a desire to do the research. It's that it's hard to find subjects to research because getting them to disclose who they are is increasingly difficult, because once they expose who they are, now they are opening themselves up to further harassment. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where, the research would be helpful and it would definitely help to move some things along and prove some points, but you can't research a group that doesn't want to be found, and for good reason. Um, so there is that. Uh, Another piece of it is the fact that um, in colleges specifically, gender nonconforming people and trans people might find it very difficult to kind of assimilate into college culture because of the fact that um, colleges and universities are incredibly gendered. You have male dorms and female dorms. You have male bathrooms and female bathrooms. You have fraternities and sororities. So for a person who's gender nonconforming, do they join a fraternity or a sorority? There's really nothing for them to join in that one aspect. And that kind of bleeds into all the other aspects as well. Colleges are getting slightly better about this these days. They do have gender neutral bathrooms, and they are now offering, um, uh, for lack of a better term, I can't remember what they call it, but basically co-ed housing, where it's like non-gendered housing. Um, but those policies have only begun to exist within the past, I want to say maybe 5 years. Like 10 years would be a stretch to say that you would see non-gendered bathrooms or non-gendered housing on a college campus. Um, and then another piece of the puzzle is that, oh, and gender-based sports. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes. But that's the thing, is that there's so many examples that I can't even think of them off the top of my head. Like if you really look at um, if you really look at it, you can see that it's college spaces, for whatever reason, seem to be more gendered than a lot of other spaces. Um, and then there's also the fact that your gender identity is not immutable. It changes and it ebbs and flows throughout a person's lifetime. And oftentimes, people who are either gender nonconforming or transgender might not discover it until later in their life. Some people, and especially now, we're finding that a lot of children are kind of becoming more cognizant of their gender and or making kind of not choices, but like making realizations of like who they might be and what they might think that their identity might be. And I think that that has a lot to do with the fact that we're just in a better place now, where children are more free to do that than they would have been years ago. But typically, a person doesn't start to really do the deep dive of thinking about their gender until after adolescence. And especially, even if they have been, they might be bogged down by shame. So a lot of people who enter college are kind of entering a stage in their life where it's their first chance to be away from their family, maybe, or away from everybody that they knew. It's a chance to reinvent themselves. So when they arrive to college and they realize that they might be dealing with some gender things, they might make a lot of changes really quick. Um, or they might start to make the changes after they've settled in for a minute. It really just depends. Everybody's on a totally different timeline. So that's another thing that makes it difficult to study as well, is the fact that a person's gender identity um, changes throughout their life. And it's one of the few kind of identity developments that is not linear and that doesn't stay fixed. Your race is your race. That is something that exists from you're born into that, and that's static. That doesn't change. Your ethnicity is your ethnicity. What you were raised as culturally, that's basically what you're going to identify as, unless maybe you disown your family and marry somebody with a different ethnicity and take on their ethnicity, then sure. But generally, that's going to stay pretty static throughout your life. Your sexual orientation and your gender, however, those are going to ebb and flow. You might think it's one thing, but then later on it's going to be something completely different. Or you might think it's one thing and it could stay the same your entire life. There's really no way to know. So that's another thing that kind of makes things a little bit complicated. Um, and yeah, I mean, that is essentially most of what I covered in my paper. I'm just kind of giving it a quick little a quick little kind of glance just to see if there's any other points that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, you still have about a minute, Jeff, or a few minutes if you want to take them.
Okay. Oh, okay. So actually, yes, perfect. There's also the fact that not until more recently was there any kind of transgender representation in the media. That was few and far in between. There wasn't really any gay representation in the media aside from maybe Will and Grace and Queer as Folk in the 90s, and that was basically it for the longest time. Um, but even then, there were no like trans characters that were portrayed in a way that was either respectful or realistic. It just didn't happen. It isn't until really within the past, I want to say, what, like 5 years, that we've had shows that really showcase the trans experience. And even a show like RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul at one point even said that he wouldn't cast a transgender woman on the show because he thought that that was like somebody taking steroids at the Olympics. He thought it was like somebody cheating because his views, he's an older gay, even he was a little out of touch. That has since changed. That's evolved. Since that's happened, we've had people who have gone on to Drag Race as trans women who have won the show. Um, and so all of that is to say is that oftentimes when there is a transgender student on campus who is living their life out and honestly, um, much like when there's one Black person around or one person of any other minority around, they tend to unfairly become the representative for all other people who fall under that identity. And that ends up becoming exhausting for that person. If you are the one trans person on campus, you are now expected to be the person who answers every question about transgender identity. And you also have the added burden of needing to be the best like example of a trans person that you possibly can be, because now you are basically the representative for your entire community, whether you want to or not. And that's just an unfair expectation. So that's just another kind of piece of the puzzle of like what transgender and gender nonconforming students are kind of burdened with when they enter college, is if they are the only one that people know, then they are the only one in those people's eyes, and therefore they set the bar for every other person who is like them. So it gets to be a little bit much. Um, they often say like, if you're a minority, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And the same rings true for transgender people and gender nonconforming people, is that you have to work twice as hard to be seen half as much. You have to be twice as much of a person to be seen as half of a person. And so it gets to be very tiring and very weary. Um, and what can really burn a person out is when, you're basically constantly asked questions about your identity that can really wear on a person. It can get very tiring. It can become demoralizing. Um, so, I often will tell people Google is free and it doesn't cost somebody's emotional or mental labor in order for you to find the answers of the question that you easily probably could have typed into Google to ask. So, uh, they're there to get educated. They're not there to educate other people, but that often becomes the case. But yeah, with that, I think that pretty much covers everything that I have covered in my paper, specifically regarding transgender affairs. There's obviously, I mean, I go over a lot of other aspects, but you know.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. And okay, we have our next panelist is Annam. And Anu is an acclaimed artist, educator, curator, and administrator. In their 30-year artistic practice, they explore psychology through watercolor, acrylic, oil, and collage by weaving realistic and abstract images of figures and faces to create a final impact of honest emotion. Their passion for comics, sci-fi, satire, and Indian mythology drives their digital and ink work and informs the engaging tone and content of their classes and social justice practice. They have won multiple arts, teaching, and community grants from and collaborate with faculty at numerous institutions on Long Island and in New York City. They have received proclamations from the town of Huntington and the town of Patchogue for their tireless dedication to supporting the arts. Annam has recently been named the 2023 recipient of the NYSCA Interdisciplinary Artist Award. Annam has curated one-day to season-long exhibitions at institutions on Long Island and New York City and has exhibited their paintings globally. Annam has earned their bachelor's degree from Tufts University and Boston Museum School. Annam is on multiple arts, education, and advocacy boards and committees. They are certified as a trauma-informed instructor for teaching in multilingual classrooms and culturally responsive pedagogy. Annam is the founder director of the arts-based support and advocacy organization, Sea of Visibility, which provides robust multidisciplinary arts events and education programs that center queer, BIPOC persons with invisible disabilities, aiding in the integration of the disabled community into the cultural landscape of New York. They believe that through kindness, community, arts programs, and advocacy, individuals can thrive as Annam has through multiple marginalized experiences to lead a meaningful life full of contribution and joy. And we're very excited to have Anu talk about all of these projects and issues that she's involved in. Welcome, Anu.
I'm muted, of course. So hi, Donna. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Yes, a lot of my work has actually had a much focus in the queer community. As Jeff was mentioning, how it's very personal. My work too, like, well, my identity is I have a very intersectional experience as a brown, queer, disabled person, and there are, as you add on to that identity, it does get more and more tough to get a voice and get a seat at a table that's not used to it. At tables that are used to it, it's not a problem, actually. So, like here, you've been wonderful, and so I personally too have been through the questioning, and it's even ended up ending a relationship because the person wouldn't stop with a boundary that was very much a trigger for a longtime friend, just constantly questioning my gender when she thought it was an insult to call me a boy because I would dress like a boy, but it's called that before it all came out about being non-binary. She would definitely say that, and then now she says, "Oh, you're so feminine, though. You're so." It was just really very difficult, and I felt very teased about it from a very close friend, and it was almost too much to bear. But yeah, so this is something that reflects in all the work that I've been you've been describing, Donna. I have it probably what dovetails off of what Jeff was talking about most recently would be these pictures. I can put these pictures in the chat. Illuminated was an exhibition I did in Patchogue that was, oh, okay, I don't think I'm allowed to do it, but if I'm permitted at all to like put a picture in, but it was about gender. It was Illuminated, a lens on gender, And that's not in the deck that I gave you, because that deck is more of just the work that I was doing with the NISCA Interdisciplinary Artist Grant, which is called Context to Content, Immaterial Girls. So that's more about femme, trans identities and versus maybe drag as a performance. Like through art, we were teasing apart identities and definitions, and actually creating space for our community to get together. Yeah. So and these are the organizations that I've worked for well over a decade, and Long Island Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, Born This Way, performances. So I've started the ones after the festival. Mosaic, BOPI, Bisexual, Open, Pansexual People of the Islands. Context to Content is a program that's gone through Sea of Visibility. So it's next slide. And we have a web presence that you could find us. So this is what was done at the Long Island Museum that Pramila and Anna came to. And as you can see, this is a historical representation of queerness in South Asian culture that goes back 4,000 years. And there's non-binary identities that have existed in the South Asian diaspora that was so accepted. Even like my cousin was born as a boy but dressed by parents as a girl in feminine clothing and all that, and it was just considered okay. And during my dance, I was dressed as a boy. It was very common, and I believe that a lot of this has been suppressed by colonization, which is most commonly a belief, but it still happens. But I think stigmatizing it is more Western. But we have people called hijras, and it's included in the culture. But we didn't have a pride until, like, a Western pride parade until 2018. So it's almost like two cultures are going on. Like in India, it would be like maybe like the historical culture based on the many religions that exist. And Pramila was talking about it in her talk earlier. And then there's the westernized culture that's coming from the globalization, right? So we're like bicultural in our own country. So, well, I even said that I'm here in the US, but in my mind, I've always had like that bicultural feeling. So we can move to, that's Sundari and Mohan, the excellent dancers. I can give you all information on these wonderful artists that help. I let the artists speak for themselves because there are so many points of views. As Jeff was also saying, we are not monolithic. People are individuals, and we bring something different to the table, and that's why everyone deserves that voice to be able to explain. I understand we should generalize just for like ease to bring people into it, but this context to content is to go understand our alphabet soup and the queer community person at a time, and expand our knowledge of what we could be. So if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is just a beautiful sculpture by Jay Sri Abichandi, and that's Sonali Skandan dancing, a feminist dance, a Durga dance. And this is like also a trans dancer who was sculpted, combination of two trans dancers who are sculpted in a difficult Bharatanatyam pose. So we can go to the next, and we can go through them quickly. It's okay. I want to just show you the type of events that we've been having on Long Island that could bring people together in a way that is safe and artistic, and it's for everyone. It's not just for artists at all. This is an artist, a wonderful artist, Punita Mittal, who lives on Long Island, who is a great supporter of our community. For years, she's joined the Born This Way and the Mosaic exhibition that's been going on from even before, now 10 years, because it was happening during the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, and they've done it longer than I was even a part of it. So it'd be next, yeah. So this was like very fun. Through this celebration, we also we do educate. It's educating in a soft way, in a way to communicate with people. See, as they create art, they learn. But like so many people, there's Jeff right there. And that's Naked Mayhem. Creating, this is a drag. Naked Mayhem is a drag king, and is a lesbian and identifies female lesbian. So does parsing this all out so you see for yourself and meet people, and it becomes embodied through the art. So you remember this fully. So those biases can be removed. Oh, before that, if you can show that. This is from the first Pride Parade in Patchogue, where Born This Way performed. And Jeff's Annie Manildu was a performer there. So Annie performed at the first Pride Parade. So, that was a big event, because Annie was one of the people who even has been fighting in Patchogue to remove stigma, and this was a big, a great thing to happen. So we could go to the next one, and this was called the Colors of Queer Block Party, and it happened in Bayshore, specifically because the community already is of color, and there are definitely different needs in different communities of color, that it's not like I was telling you about the mythology of India. Let's say that the DJ was he's actually from near Hyderabad, DJ Reddy, and that's where I'm from. The strictness of it not happening, maybe in the stories, queerness, polyamory, all of that, and it could be polyamory could be included in queerness, but it may not, like I was saying, it translate into everyday lives, and it seems like often cultures can become very strict, and especially if they're an immigrant culture, they may feel they need to be even more. We have a celebration of multicultural celebration where we can come together, and it's the first one that on Long Island that was about queers of color, and we are trying to make this continue. And then if the next slide is, if you want to do the next slide, it was the closing party that was focusing more on the visual artists, and that's body image, artwork, and we basically we broke bread, had multicultural food with each other, and it's to show that this is this is definitely like cross-cultural, building cross-cultural friendships, while also in trans, while also queer in other ways. So the next slide, please. So art was actually being made too during the time that's Bella Noche. Actually, this artist also made a portrait of Annie. I don't have it with me, but I think Annie has the original one. So you can next slide. And that was done that day. And then next slide. This is Sea of Visibility, which is more to the promotes the mental health. And obviously this is an issue when there is so much violence against our community. To have access to mental health and to have some support to be able to be encouraged to be visible, you know, and be comfortable with yourself, and have safe spaces for this version of you is extremely important in my opinion. And Deej is here, so the next picture, I made sure they were sent them a little message. Deej came as a cat, and hi, and was drawing a twin cat. So it was that was at Arts Ontario in Patchogue as well. So yeah, we've done things in Huntington as well. But we've just tried to reach as many communities, and if anybody wants to assist or help, that's what I'm looking for, because it is work, but I find it really important to have these communities, these events available for people to meet at and enjoy. And yeah, so thanks for letting me show you these pictures. I hope people take advantage of the opportunities or want to help out too.
Okay. Thank you, Anu. Thank you so much, and such wonderful work that you do, really, and very inspirational. Thank
With
you.
a lot of us, it's so many people doing it. But
Yes,
that's why. But we always need more. We get burnt out as artists.
absolutely. And having said that, I want to just squeeze in for a little bit. Elise Glazer. Elise has launched from Seattle recently an interactive print magazine, and I'll let Elise tell you about it. If are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Elise.
Hi. Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for all of just sharing so many amazing things and all of your words. It's been a great talk this past hour. Yeah, so I'm in Seattle, and I just dropped the link in the chat, but I'll drop it again. My friend and I are putting together an art magazine that's full of art, mostly from queer and trans artists, and really focused on, you know, celebrating queer and trans joy. We have articles on drag artists in Seattle. A lot of it is Seattle based, but some of our artists are, you know, really all over. And yeah, it's a 100+ page magazine featuring 20 different artists. So there's going to be things like games, lots of art, poetry, short stories. We have tattoo artists that have contributed, and so lots of different things. And I'll just put the link in the chat, but yeah, really just kind of focused on, you know, building community and telling trans stories and celebrating trans art and experience. So yeah, if you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the chat. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for such a great event.
Thanks, Elise. And thank you again, Anu. Okay, our next and final panelist is Cassandra Skolnick. Cassandra is the founder and executive director of Society of Advocates Fighting for Equality, Inc., otherwise known as SAFE, a non-governmental organization, an NGO, with a mission focused on reconstructing the foundations of society. She seeks to construct a true egalitarian society which is sustainable, progressive, non-discriminatory, and equitable for all, regardless of identity. This is done through varying forms of activism, including the research and composition of public policy, political lobbying, feminist art, community organizing, peaceful protests and demonstrations, social media activism, volunteering, and education and awareness programs. Cassandra is currently in the process of launching a media organization running concurrently with SAFE and focused on giving a voice to communities censored by mainstream media. She's an award-winning activist and collaborative partner to many world-renowned activists, including Nadia Tolokonova. Okay, that's a challenge, sorry. Tolokonnikova of Pussy Riot. Her powerful voice and eagerness to create genuine social change has made her a respected leader and mentor to the communities she serves. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Welcome. And I actually heard a talk by, I think it was Nadia, recently on a radio show. She was talking about, how Pussy Riot started and the whole, everything that happened. So, wow, fascinating. Okay, thanks, Cassandra. Take it away.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Donna, and thank you to all the panelists that have spoken. It's hard going last. So many great thoughts were shared already, but I'm going to do my best to bring some new things into the mix here. As Donna had said, she, read through my biography. I've been an activist for my entire life. I have fought for many different communities, many different groups across the nation. Recently, I was just named a global activist with partners in about 14 different countries right now, in which we have been exchanging ideas, learning language, making sure that we're more inclusive of one another in our fight for this egalitarian society. In 2019, here in New York, you may have heard of work that I have done. I was in Albany. I was one of the political lobbyists that overturned the use of gender markers on both public and private health insurance. It was a long fought battle. It was many hours, but we did win. So now in New York State, you can get care despite what gender you identify as, which is amazing. But one of the things I want to talk about today, what I want to bring into the conversation is, I'm so excited that a group like Suffolk NOW, historically was started originally to focus on gender rights, has now expanded to include people like myself, groups like mine, to be here and to speak about how we can collaborate and build a brighter future. One of the things that I talk about frequently since I founded SAFE in 2020 is that there is so much division in the world of activism. Everybody's focused on individual rights, focused on women's rights, focused on LGBTQ rights, that everybody's shouting and fighting with one another for representation, that we drown each other out. And what's happening is, and I'm sorry, my background's in feminist philosophy, so I may use some terminology. I'll try to tone it down a little bit. But this patriarchal system is continuing to win because they're dividing and conquering us. And one of the things that I have always promoted, and Jeff being a member of SAFE and also a good friend of mine will tell you, is I'm like, stop yelling. Let's sit down at the table together and let's start to really have the conversations that matter. So being here today and getting to share this with you is a really amazing experience. And I really appreciate Suffolk NOW for putting this together. Why do I say that our rights are so much tied together? Why do I say this? Is that there's only one system of oppression. Too often we're made to believe that there's all these systems that are fighting against us, but it's just one system. And the main battle has been over bodily autonomy. And I think everybody in this room right now can understand that. Women are fighting over the rights to abortions. They're fighting over the rights to access to contraception. Trans and non-binary individuals are fighting for gender-affirming care. They're fighting for the ability to participate in sports. Immigrants and refugees are fighting for the ability just to be able to exist within this country, within these imagined borders. People with able-bodiedness being such a divisive tool are just fighting for everything at the moment. there's just this constant struggle for everybody based off of bodily autonomy. And why is that? It's because our government, this whole idea of this patriarchy, has put it in our minds that there's a normative expectation to how we should look, how we should behave, how we should act, and how we should live. Women are supposed to be barefoot and pregnant in the home, taking care of the children. Men should be out in the workforce, providing for the family. All families should have 2 children, the concept of that nuclear family. So when we step outside of that, it creates a lot of hate. It creates a lot of violence. The reason the trans and non-binary community has been such a target recently is because we're changing the whole concept of gender. We're showing that it's not so binary. There's a spectrum. I am trans, but I identify as non-binary because I don't conform to those binary standards. So what do we do? Like, how do we move forward? I'm trying to be mindful of time. So much to say, but what we really need to start to do is we need to start to to eliminate identity. Actually, it's going to sound very radical. Again, as Donna said, I'm friends with Nadia Tolokonnikova, and if you've seen how radical she is, I'm equal, if not worse. She refers to me as her sister because we both have very similar ways of handling things. But this whole idea that if we continue to have identity put upon us, we're going to continue to face this oppression. We're people. We're all people. We were all put on this earth with certain human rights that were never supposed to be infringed upon. In fact, when governments were created, they were supposed to protect those rights. Now that government has started to go in this regressive direction and started to infringe upon our rights, it's now our job to say, this government no longer works for us and we need to change it. And that's what, SAFE has been a foundation for. We've done amazing work on the global stage. Not to toot my own horn or say that this organization is so awesome or anything else, but it is. We're building a resistance. We want everybody to feel comfortable standing shoulder to shoulder and fighting against the government and saying enough is enough. Toot that horn. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. We want people to feel confident for expressing their views. Too often, I'm told, why are you operating on Long Island in Suffolk County? Because suburban families are against the trans community or they don't care about equal rights and everything. But that's not true. I've had the conversations. I've talked to families. So many of them are afraid of how they'll be perceived by their neighbors that's why they don't speak up. But if we show this united front, if we show that we're all in this together, you'd be surprised at just how, much of Suffolk County is progressive and does want to see these changes. Looking over my notes real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything I wanted to talk about here. So again, Donna also talked about the fact that we are now launching a media organization. And one of the things that Jeff and I have had a chance to talk about in the past is that you listen to the media talk about trans experience, about women's battle for women's rights, or about issues with gun violence and everything else. It's always the same people speaking, the people that don't experience it. So I'm putting together this media organization because I want raw emotion and I want people that actually are experiencing this to have a voice and be able to talk to other people in the community and say, I feel you, I hear you, I see you, because this is how I experience it. We're so excited by this media organization that when we started the idea and put it out there, we didn't expect to get a big set of return on this. We thought that was going to be something in the summer. We had to speed it up quite a bit because we had very famous journalists. We had advocates that were coming to us and saying, we want part. We want to write for you this. This is what we want to do. And we think that this is going to be a great way to start to get the word out there. I'm so proud to have met Anu today because with the feminist art side, in January, I know Jeff has the inside scoop. I'm not going to get too much into it, but we have this huge feminist art project that's coming out to build that resistance movement. It is so exciting. We just had a whole bunch of interns from Stony Brook University enroll in our feminist art program. So anew, we got a lot of people to work with. So we got to collaborate. This is going to be brilliant. But it's going to be on a global scale. You are going to see videos. You are going to be seeing it on social media. You're going to be seeing photos. They're going to be hosted in galleries. We have a partnership with Gay Times. If you don't know Gay Times magazine, please read Gay Times. It's amazing. There's going to be a spread in Gay Times about this movement that we are doing. I have spoken to the CEO on multiple occasions, and he's so excited, so enthusiastic about what we're putting together. And 2024 is going to be a pivotal year. If anybody has looked at the polls, you've seen the numbers, I hope it scares you to death, because all of the hateful, oppressive politicians that are running are winning in the polls. Now, I know polls mean nothing, but we need to make sure that those numbers get buried. And it's time for us to start to build that resistance. I'll save other things for questions. I'm trying to get through this here. How much time, Donna, have I got left? I try not to run too over.
Well, we figured we'd go a little bit over. So yeah, if you want to add, take another minute or two to say a few more things that you wanted to say, go right ahead.
Perfect. I mean, I guess I will, cut it off a little bit here and just say that, the fact that Suffolk Now is recognizing an organization like mine, or recognizing the trans and non-binary community, is such a positive in this movement forward. We really need to start to build this coalition building. I'm so proud of Suffolk Now for what they've put together today. I was very excited when I was asked to be a panelist here, because for the first time, I'm starting to get a sense that we're not focused on just what's making us different, but we're starting to see what makes us the same. And we're starting to finally get that idea that if we recognize that and we start working together, we can finally make the change that needs to happen. Everybody wins. And we start to live a more equal world with more access, more doors open to us, and less violence. So I would also just, everybody asks this question. I know it might come up in question and answers. We talked about public policy. SAFE has multiple public policies sitting on Governor Hochul's desk right now. We continue to lobby for. It's thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that plug. We continue to put together very comprehensive pieces of legislation. We have a trans sports bill that is so well versed that honestly, we believe it could overturn national precedent. We have bans on assault weapons to protect our communities. We also have worked on immigration reform. Our government can't do immigration reform. SAFE did the immigration reform. We are really, really excited about what our group puts together, and we bring together some of the greatest minds in the world. I'm hoping everybody in this group today is so excited that I start getting emails saying, how do I join? How do I be a member? Because we want to build this up. We want this to be 2024 to be a very exciting year. I'm sorry, I'm not following the chat. It's flying by, but thanks, Jeff. I appreciate all the plugs on there. The other thing that I would just say is that just continue to talk. Communication is key in all of this. I was up in Rochester for Pride and the Pride Parade. And one of the things that was so exciting about being up in Rochester, which I have never had very positive responses in areas of upstate New York, but if any of you are from Rochester, Rochester is absolutely amazing. I give you so many kudos, so many props, great place, was that politicians there were coming up and asking the questions. And I was very shocked. They were coming up and they were saying, we've heard the work you're doing. We've heard the things you've put together. How do we fix Rochester? Okay, there's a Rochester Now group. I'd love to know them. But it was so invigorating to know that, there is a wave out there of people that are willing to learn. They are willing to listen. And I think that, we really have a great opportunity coming up. So while today we're doing Trans Day of Remembrance, and it is a day of mourning, and we are remembering the lives that are lost, I want us to also take those lives lost and turn it into something positive by banding together, by building this coalition and making change so that we don't have to celebrate many more Trans Days of Remembrance, but we'll have more Trans Days of celebration in the future. And I will close there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cassandra, for a very, very moving talk. And if you can hold your questions, we're going to do a quick memorial service, and then if you can hang on, we'll have questions and answers afterwards, and even if you can stay, a little bit of a discussion. So let me just switch over. Okay, is everyone able to see the screen? Yeah, okay. Okay, wonderful. All right, we'll just have a few moments of silence, and we'll sadly honor those that have passed away in a violent way in the past year, and also some statistics and resources that are important to know. Okay, some pretty, oops, okay, some pretty hard statistics. But I hope that this evening was very helpful and hopeful. And I'd like to open it up for questions or comments.
Donna, I don't know if you see Mickey, I believe it is, has a hand up.
Okay, okay, yes, Mickey, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi,
Welcome, Mickey.
thank you so much. Cynthia mentioned a couple bills in New York State Legislature, and I'm sorry I did not get the numbers of those bills. Can I get those numbers?
Yeah, Cynthia, can you give us the numbers again of the bills? Cynthia's still, oh, Cynthia. Can you hear me? Oh, man. I don't think Cynthia can hear me. But just Mickey, I'll just make a note and I'll get that information to you because I'm interested in it as well. So I'll get those bills.
Okay, and if you don't have my email, I know Pramila does.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Okay, all right, thanks.
Can I mention in the
Hi, can you folks hear me?
Oh, Cynthia, yes, now we can hear you.
Stupid Zoom, I'm very sorry. Okay, yes, it's
Okay.
one bill that has a number in the Senate and the Assembly of the state. The bill is Senate number 1532-1532 and Assembly 4576-4576. It does not have a cute, rememberable acronym like Genda did. It is, however, a very important bill to give explicit protections to trans and gender nonconforming students.
Thank you. I can easily look those up.
Great, thank you very much, Cynthia.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Anu? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. In the chat, someone was asking about future events, and there is one coming up December 16th, but this is more for everyone who was awarded the New York State Council on the Art grant. There was 3 other grantees in different disciplines. I also want to shout out Stony Brook Medicine, who came in and helped supply funds because you saw how much we were doing with the money. That was just in 1 year. The slides, we're Born This Way and all that stuff has been going on for like many years, like all with Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. Like I've been working with it over a decade, but that was this last year. And it does get costly. And Stony Brook Medicine pitched in and supported us financially. But what they're doing is also so much great research. And I was wondering if Jen Messiano, who is attending, can mention some of the things they're doing for the trans community, because I think it's really important. And that's really, I was really happy to be able to introduce them to the people at our events.
Anu, thank you so much for that. And we were so happy that we were able to finally partner with you after having worked with you for quite a few years now as a community partner and supporter of all of our work. We first met when Stony Brook was launching our LGBTQ plus community health needs survey for Long Island, which was the first such survey of Long Island ever. And the results of that are posted to our website at the link that I put into the chat. That survey effort itself was pretty gargantuan. Thank you, Jeff. And I know you were part of helping us to promote that as well. Jeff was one of the queens that helped us to promote the survey at BTW in Oceanside. That was so awesome, so much fun. But work putting together that survey was a pretty gargantuan effort because there really wasn't a survey instrument in existence that had been tested that we felt was really doing the job of being inclusive of the entire LGBTQ plus community, and in particular, people who were transgender and gender non-binary and intersex. So if you have an opportunity to take a look at it, you can see that when we did the survey, rather than giving people a checkbox for example, for their gender identity, we let them enter in their own and to self-identify. And we ended up with over 20 gender identities and a similar number of sexual orientations that people chose to enter in for themselves. And it was very important for us to be able to do that and give folks the opportunity to, for once, find themselves in the survey and not feel like they're yet again being, sidelined in a really important public health effort. So coming off of the survey results, which was a successful effort, by the way, we had over 1,150 completed, validated surveys in Nassau and Suffolk counties, which really blew everyone out of the water. We thought we would be lucky to get 300, and we were able to very much surpass that with the help of folks like Anu and Jeff and so many people in the community that we met. So what did we do with the survey results? Well, we found, as Jeff and everyone has mentioned here, the LGBTQ plus community is not a monolith. And because we gave folks the opportunity to self-identify and we had such a great survey response, we were able to analyze the results by subgroups within the population across various demographies, race, ethnicity, income, and gender identity and sexual orientation. And what we saw under many of the categories is that folks who were trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming had much more difficulty in terms of mental health and behavioral health needs, negative healthcare experiences and accessing care from their providers, and in receiving acceptance from the greater community. And of course, this all turns into a feedback loop for difficulty in mental health, behavioral health outcomes, and health outcomes generally. So there has been a great deal of work happening across the Stony Brook system. And I'm sure we don't have time today to go through all of it. But what I can say is that we have are continuing to make improvements system-wide to provide a more welcoming environment for the LGBTQ plus community. Two very important outcomes of that survey are at the link that I dropped in the chat. We put together a provider directory of healthcare providers who are culturally competent and who are, interested in providing care for gender non-binary, transgender, and everyone across the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And many specialists, primary care. There's the Edie Windsor Healthcare Center in Hampton Bays, which is a dedicated center for the LGBTQ plus community. So I'll leave it to you guys to take a look at that. The second thing I'll mention is that we've been very active in sponsoring community events and showing up at community events to make sure that folks know that we're here to provide that care. We have clinicians that attend lots of the events to speak with people one-on-one. And a very key thing that we saw was that there were very few events that provided safe space for young people. We're talking teens and younger. So we started a collaboration with the Suffolk County Farm in Yaphank, and now 2 or 3 times a year, we sponsor events there that are very family friendly and they are adorable. I invite everybody to come check it out. So generally we have Pride event in June. We had a coming out day fair in October, and other things in the works for the coming year or so. And that's at the farm in Yaphank. That's right. So if anyone would like more information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email address in the chat. And if you have any questions that I can't answer, I will absolutely, get answers for you and try to connect you with any resources that might be useful. So thank you, Anu, for giving me the opportunity to talk. And thank you, Donna, for allowing me to talk as well. I much appreciate it. And I really enjoyed hearing everybody's presentations today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. We're so happy that you were able to make it and let us know about the services and what you've been working on. So, okay. Anybody else have? Oh, Jeff.
I had.
Oh, sorry, Pramila. Jeff, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out that one, I'm also glad that Jen got a chance to talk about Stony Brook medicine, because I really admire everything that they've been doing, from the survey to all of the family-friendly events. I was really happy to be involved with all of it, basically. And I also wanted to say that I vouch for the fact that I have seen them at almost like every community event that I can think of, that like advertised in the community. So they have been a strong presence, and so I wanted to really just put that out there, that I really admire that. And I also wanted to say that in the chat, I'm going to put a link to a Google Doc, and it is, you just ignore the formatting, but it is my my capstone paper, if anybody feels that they want to read more in depth about either what I spoke about or like the other things that I researched in that paper. Like I said, a lot of the research is honestly outdated. Like some of the figures are from 2011, which usually in academia you don't want to go any more than 10 years back, but I had to work with what I had. But again, the formatting is a little wonky. The indents are not there. There might be double spacing where there shouldn't be. It's just because I copied and pasted it from a Word document and didn't really fix it up. But the information is there. So if anybody's interested and wants to read more, they're more than welcome to.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you again to Jeff for recommending Anu and Cassandra. And thank you again, Cynthia, for, oh gosh, what, 3-4 years ago, asking if Suffolk Now would host a to-door event. And I think I'll finish up and then I'll turn it back over to Pramila. But I think what tonight has definitely shown us is that all of us working independently can work so much better together. And we really have a tidal wave that we're going up against in this next year and the coming elections next year. And it's worrying, and we all have to work together to make this world a more inclusive place. And to hear, what all of you have been doing in that regard is very creative and inspirational and thoughtful. And thank you all so much and for participating. And we hope to see you all, again and work together. We have Troublemaker Tuesdays once a month. We meet at Bahama Breeze, and it's a great opportunity to get together with like-minded people and talk about the issues, vent, have something to eat, something to drink, and strategize. It's a wonderful thing. And if you don't get to one, there's always going to be another one the following month. So and we'll keep sending out that information. Okay, thank you all again. And back over to our president, Pramila. I think it's fine.
Thank you so much, Donna, for putting this program together.
Oh,
It
thanks.
was
Thank you
terrific.
all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the panelists, Cynthia. I've known you for such a long time, and each time I hear you speak, I learn new information. So thank you. And
Thanks.
Anu, that was fantastic, all the creative work that you're doing and using art to educate the community. And Cassandra, that was fabulous what you had described. And all of you, and then Jeff, Annie, you were just wonderful in presenting your paper. I'm really looking forward to reading it, as well as Elise Glazer and Jennifer Messiano, and the work that Stony Brook Medicine is doing in this regard. I had a question for the panelists, and that is, Suffolk Now is, just finished, meeting with the candidates, just before the midterms, and we endorsed, candidates. So, do the panelists, any of the panelists, do you have suggestions of how we can bring, the trans issues to the attention of our local politicians, our local congressperson? Even though we have so many Republicans who are elected to office, what is it that we can do to bring trans issues to the attention of our, local politicians, so that even if you cannot answer now, you can perhaps write to me and let me know, because all of your ideas can really help Suffolk Now, to take that, extra step and do whatever it is in our capacity.
I'd love to throw something out there if I can. And it really comes down to, Pramila, is asking the right questions. Ask them where their stance is on gender affirming care. Ask them where their stance is on, trans and non-binary athletes' involvement in athletic programs. Ask them what they know about the trans and non-binary community. I have talked to so many politicians in upstate New York who did not have a clue about the trans and non-binary community. They are quick to jump to support oppressive legislation, but they have no knowledge. So why are they supporting any position? So a lot of the work that needs to be done with politicians is asking questions, just making sure that we're asking constantly, because education is the only way we're going to make a step forward here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Good. My audio settings have been wonky. Okay, I think among other things is I've met too many politicians who claim to have never met a trans, intersex, gender non-conforming, non-binary person, which I think is utter bull, because go on my Facebook friends sometime, you'll see hundreds, if not a couple thousand people, most of whom are somewhere on the gender spectrum. But these politicians and candidates still somehow seem sometimes to think they haven't met one of us. I think that there should be some kind of actual meeting with particularly candidates, but also sitting politicians where we get to talk to them. I would love to see what Now could help set up with this kind of stuff. I have for too many years been trying to get access to talk with some of the people who represent my districts. And I really think it would help not just, my sense of things, but would also help things for everybody, because it would mean they can't say they haven't seen us, they haven't spoken with us. And I think there should be people of every gender that we can get to talk with them. Cis supporters / allies, trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming. I mean, I'm sure there's a million gender categories I don't have the time to even think up the words for tonight. And I really think they need to hear these politicians and candidates for office from people to know what the issues actually are. As Jeff said, people too often support oppressive policies without even knowing the people affected, without talking with the people affected.
Yeah.
When I talk about this stuff anywhere I go, I meet people who say, oh my God, I never knew about this stuff, and I never met somebody like this, or at least they think that. A friend of mine's child, who is now actually, like, I think end of teens, beginning of 20s. Yikes. At the time was 10 and was in elementary school, being told by some classmate, there are just boys and girls and you're one and the other and that's it. And my friend's kid got to say, "Nuh-uh, I met Miss Cynthia and I know there is more than that." And that's what I think our politicians should at least be as confident as my friend's at the time 10-year-old kid.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I think these are great suggestions. I feel very inspired by today's program, and we should continue to stay in touch. Please follow our Facebook page. It's a Suffolk Now Facebook page to follow what we are doing in our future programs. And also, as Donna mentioned, we meet the second Tuesday of each month at Bahama Breeze. So please join us at 6 o'clock on the second Tuesday of each month. And if you're not a Now member, please become a Now member and come to our meetings.
And we have one last question from Jeff.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on what both Cynthia and Cassandra were saying, and also just amplify kind of what Anu just said in the chat when she said visibility and Cassandra said sometimes hypervisibility. I think that another part of this puzzle and another thing that is just as important is basically doing whatever it is that can be done to amplify marginalized queer voices, specifically marginalized trans voices. So visibility is extremely important, but so in the sense of when there is some kind of media content or there is something that is just representing trans folks, to get it in front of as many eyes as possible. The reason why we fell in love with certain TV characters is because it felt like they were in our living rooms for many years. And I had heard somebody once say that it's really easy to hate somebody that you don't know. And so part of the struggle or the battle is to basically make it feel as if these people know gender nonconforming and trans people, because once they get to know these people, they will learn that they are people and they will learn to humanize them instead of demonize them. And so much like how we fall in love with our favorite TV characters because they are, oh, Cassie, because we feel like they're hanging out with us in our living room once a week, it has to be the same thing with trans and non-binary people, where they have to feel as if they have spent some time with them. Because like I said, it's very easy to hate somebody when you don't know who they are. The same way that it's easy to make an awful comment on a YouTube video without a picture on your profile, or it's easy to make an awful comment on any social media because, you're just another name in a list of names. So I think that's another big piece of it. And I just kind of wanted to tag that on to what everybody else was saying.
Thanks. I got one last thing, is simply that in the interest of hypervisibility, which I certainly practice, I don't expect everybody else always being up for that, but I am. You can find me on Facebook, Cynthia BrianKate, CynthYa, Brian with an I, Kate with a K. Brian and Kate are smushed together.
Thank you all very much again. This was a great program, and see you all at future meetings. Good night.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having me.
all. Thank you.